I never expected to find my wife's car at my son-in-law's. What I overheard shattered my heart. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a bright Saturday afternoon, the kind of day that felt almost too perfect. The sun blazed in the sky, casting sharp shadows on the pavement as I pulled into my son-in-law's driveway. I never thought to expect anything strange when I noticed Maggie's little blue car parked there. My chest tightened. Where was she? I stepped out of my car, my heart pounding, unsure why I felt a strange twist in my stomach. The muffled sound of laughter floated through the open window, a tinkle of joy that felt foreign in the quiet chaos of my mind. I squinted against the sunlight, peeking into the living room. There they were, my daughter and her husband, their voices bubbling over like they shared some big secret. But why was Maggie's car there? I stumbled back, my hands trembling as I gripped the doorframe. I could hear snippets of their conversation. I can't believe he doesn't know. Megan's voice trailed off, replaced by Michael's low chuckle. My breath hitched. What were they keeping from me? What was it that led to whispers and laughter when I should have been the center of the family? I crept closer, drawn like a moth to a flame. The door was cracked open just enough. My heart thundered in my chest, danger tingling in the air as the world around me faded. He thinks she's out with friends. His words hung in the air, thickening the tension in my throat. I don't know how much longer we can keep this from him. A million thoughts raced through my mind. My blood ran cold. I felt the weight of betrayal looming like a storm cloud. What on earth were they hiding? To hear my own family speak like this, sending chills down my spine, I took a step back, the ground shifting beneath me. I could feel the tears prickling behind my eyes. Was my perfect family just an illusion? The laughter I once cherished now echoed like a haunting melody. I wanted answers. I wanted to scream, to burst through the door and demand to know the truth. But I stood frozen, locked in my own confusion. They were hiding something monumental, and I felt the shift as the world around me teetered on the brink of disaster. Was my wife having an affair? Did they know something I didn't? My heart sank deeper, the muffled laughter morphing into something sinister. Just as I turned to leave, hoping to escape the heartache, I caught a glimpse of Maggie through the window, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling. In that moment, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath my feet. How could she look so happy? A sudden crash jolted my thoughts, ripping me back into reality. I looked around. My heart raced. I needed the truth. I needed to know what was really happening. But before I could catch my breath, the door swung open. I held my breath, heart pounding, waiting for the flame to ignite into chaos. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The door creaked open, and for a fleeting second, my mind raced with the possibility of confronting them, of clawing my way to the surface of this painful sea of betrayal. But as I blinked away the haze of disbelief, what immediately met my eyes was not confrontation but the surprised expression of my son-in-law, Michael. "Dad!" he exclaimed, the cheer in his voice abruptly vanishing. Behind him, Megan's face transformed from joy to concern, a mirror of my own emotions raging within me. I saw how her lips trembled slightly before she managed to speak. "What are you doing here?" The logical answer wavered at the tip of my tongue, but the knot in my stomach seemed to tighten with her words. I pushed the door wide and stepped into the living room, dimly lit yet heavy with unspoken truths. "Where's Maggie?" My voice came out steadier than I felt, yet the tremor betrayed the storm that raged inside. Megan glanced at Michael, her eyes darting to the floor as if scanning for answers hidden in the patterns on the carpet. But before she could finish, a voice broke through from the hallway. "I'm right here." It was Maggie, her cheerful shout inflected with surprise. She stepped into view, her hair cascading down her shoulders in gentle waves, illuminating the room with her presence. She looked beautiful, but beneath the surface, I felt an ocean of whirlwinds awaiting to be unleashed. "Maggie," I breathed, burning questions bubbling just beneath my calm facade. The gleam of joy in her eyes felt almost blasphemous. "What's happening?" Before I could gather my thoughts to unleash a torrent of emotions, she strolled closer, the corners of her mouth still lifted in a smile that shattered my heart. "I was just helping Megan plan a surprise for your anniversary." Her tone, while lighter than the thunder in my chest, came out with an oddly rehearsed rhythm. "A surprise?" My mind reeled. Their agitated whispers, the secret made no sense. And yet, as I searched her face for honesty, I caught the slightest quiver in her smile, the way her gaze darted momentarily to Michael's before returning to me. "An anniversary surprise?" I echoed, bitterness creeping into my words. "Without telling me?" Megan jumped in, her usual jovial spirit dropping like a stone. "We wanted it to be a surprise, Dad. It's not ready yet." "Megan, a surprise? Or a cover-up?" My voice grew firmer, bolstered by the icy wave of hurt that drowned my sense of reason. I could feel their eyes boring into me, weighing the truth against a tangled web of lies. Just then, a little voice piped up from the adjacent room, interrupting our charged moment. It was my granddaughter, little Emma, clutching a felt pen that had stained her fingers in bright shades of purple and green. "Grandpa! Look what I made!" She dashed into the room, her drawing held proudly like a trophy. The sight of her wide-eyed innocence offered a glimpse of warmth amidst the frigid tension. I could almost forget momentarily the chaos, the potential betrayal drowned out by her giggles. But the illusion was fleeting. Emma's appearance heightened the stakes, drawing sharp contrast between her innocent light and the dark clouds threatening to tear this family apart. As I bent down to admire her creation, my heart ached with the bittersweet realization that even the simplest joys were now tainted. I barely registered Maggie whispering something to Megan, voices hushed, words masked behind forced smiles, but I could feel a palpable distance grow, splitting us further apart. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, slicing clean through the heavy atmosphere. I straightened, a shiver of foreboding coursing through me. "I'll get it," I managed to say, my instinct to flee twin to the urge to stay and face the unraveling truth. I opened the door to find a tall figure standing there, silhouetted against the late afternoon sun. As he stepped into view, I felt my breath hitch, the last person I expected to see. It was Alex, my estranged brother, who had walked away years ago, leaving a trail of unresolved issues and aching silences in our past. "Hey, there's something I need to tell you," he said, his expression shadowed with urgency. In an agonizing twist of fate, I found myself staring into the eyes of my brother, a man I hadn't spoken to in what felt like a lifetime, yet, in this moment, the truth was as close as it had ever been. My heart caught in my throat, a whirlwind of confusion and fear surrounding me. What could he possibly have that would change everything? In that breathless second, the old fractures of my life began to stir, and I could only hope they wouldn't pull me under once more. The tension in the room grew thicker as I stood frozen in the doorway, Alex's presence setting off a cascade of apprehension deep within me. His brow was furrowed, shadowed by urgency, his hands clenched at his sides. I felt the world around me fade, the muffled murmurs of my family drifting into an echo, barely registering against the thunderous rhythm of my heartbeat. "Maggie's safe, isn't she?" I instinctively asked, my mind racing to the most immediate worry, his arrival overnight giving us any semblance of hope. Alex shook his head, those familiar eyes revealing a depth of emotion I feared was meant for more than just concern for her well-being. "That's not what I came to tell you." "Can I come in?" I hesitated, weighing the atmosphere of the living room infused with both love and betrayal, against the clarity of what Alex might offer. Finally, stepping aside, I gestured for him to enter, my familial instincts propelling me forward even amidst overwhelming discomfort. He stepped in, and our gaze lingered a moment longer, memories of childhood camaraderie mingling with the bitterness of lost years. As the door clicked shut, the urgency of our reunion felt more pronounced than ever, just as the distance between me and my family surged like an unyielding tide. "What is it?" I pressed, my voice taut with anticipation. "Here, let's sit down." He nodded toward the inviting but worn-out couch that faintly echoed the years it had endured, somehow symbolizing the fractures of our own shared past. As we settled into the cushions, the air prickled around us with unspoken words that I came back because I heard something about Maggie, he began, avoiding direct eye contact, instead directed toward the floor as if seeking answers in the carpet's patterns. What about her? My voice wavered, raw with concern and anger. It felt like a half-formed puzzle, two pieces teetering on a tableau possibility that wouldn't solidify until all were in play. That I don't know how else to say it. I overheard something from a mutual friend. Alex finally met my gaze, weariness lining his features. These past few months, she's been meeting someone. A man outside of the family. His words crashed over me like icy waves, numbing me momentarily. What? No, that can't be. Anger flared in my chest, conflating with denial. It wasn't like Maggie to betray. It wasn't like her to seek solace in the arms of someone outside our family unless my gut was screaming it was much worse than I thought. Look, I didn't want to believe it either. But I've seen messages, heard things. I came as soon as I could. Messages. My mind raced to the last few months her late nights spent at work, the subtle changes within her demeanor that I'd tried to dismiss. I struggled to find my footing in this turbulent sea. Who is he? I don't know all the details, Alex replied, his hands flexing into fists. But I heard names thrown around. Someone she cared about. Cared about. The word sat heavy in my mind, bringing forth the darker shadows lurking beneath the surface of our family's life. I recalled the fragile promises intertwined with love, yet here was someone who seemingly threatened to fracture that bond completely. Just then, a noise from the kitchen drew my attention. Emma's laughter echoed through the air, innocent and pure, intertwining with the bitter ache of my reality. I envisioned the world she was growing up in, a world so fragile, and shadows of betrayal looming above it like a storm cloud. Dad? Megan's voice reached us, her tone pulling me like a lifeline amid the silence that followed. I turned back to find her standing in the doorway, eyes lingering on her uncle and me. What's going on? The vulnerability in her gaze pierced through the realization that this family, built upon love and trust, was now half submerged in the sediment of ugly truths. Every glance exchanged with Alex felt like a stone, sinking it deeper. That I need to talk to your father, Megan, Alex said firmly, keeping a steady gaze on her. His words danced dangerously close to the brink of chaos, a clear signal that whatever news he bore would threaten more than just the fragile balance of our lives. But I have more news. She hesitated, face flushed with urgency, before taking a shaky breath. I think we should sit down. It's about Mom. The weight of her statement pressed down on me, colliding with a jumble of emotions, a mix of fear, hope, and an incessant urge to protect what resembled a dysfunctional family. Sit down? I echoed incredulously, a new wave of adrenaline rushing through me. More news? What's happened? I think she's been seeing someone too, Megan said, urgency shadowing each word. As those phrases settled like ash in the pit of my stomach, I could feel the bottom dropping out beneath me, the ground shattering beneath our fragile unity. Just then, Emma entered, her hands smaller than I remembered, fingers stained with vibrant colors from her creations, oblivious to the storm unfolding. She held up another drawing, beaming. Grandpa. Look. It's all of us together. In that split second, caught between Emma's innocence and the unraveling darkness around, I felt the corners of my resolve begin to fray, understanding that the echo of emotional turmoil had only just begun and this was a fight I never anticipated. With every word that struck the air, I was losing pieces of what I cherished most. And I realized, as each moment slipped through my fingers like sand, that the real fight was only just beginning. I stared at Emma, her drawing a stark contrast to the devastation brewing within. She looked up at me expectantly, her eyes shimmering with innocence and hope, utterly unaware of the shifting foundations of our family. My heart ached at the sight of her, a reminder of all that was beautiful in this increasingly fractured world. Megan, what do you mean? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and fear. The atmosphere in the room morphed, thickening like fog before a storm. I could feel Alex's presence, a ghost of my past, either a savior or a harbinger of further chaos. That I overheard Mom talking on the phone last week. She was whispering about plans, Megan confessed, her own voice wavering. I thought it was work, at first, but she kept saying he and not Josh. I couldn't understand why she sounded so secretive. My brain struggled to process this. The notion of my wife seeking comfort outside our marriage felt like a punch to the gut, a betrayal that threatened to fracture the very essence of who we were as a family. Are you sure? I asked, searching her face for any hint of misjudgment or misunderstanding. Maybe it's nothing, Dad, Megan's brows knitted in frustration. I wouldn't just say this if I wasn't sure. I care about Mom, and I want her to be happy, but I just don't know anymore. It feels wrong, everything feels wrong right now, I mumbled, my heart aching with the realization that my daughters were caught in a trap of unseen dangers, their innocence being overshadowed by adult disloyalties. After a moment of silence, Alex said, if she is seeing someone, it's not just a friendship. His voice was steady, reassuring in its despair. I think we need to find out who it is before it gets worse. That I wanted to protest. I wanted to beckon logic, pragmatism, the idea that confronting this storm head-on was ill-advised. But in my gut, I knew Alex was right. This was more than just a crack in our family. It felt like an insidious shadow creeping in, wrapping its cold fingers around our future. Maggie loves her family, I said, trying to convince myself as much as my daughters. She wouldn't betray us like that. The doorbell rang, jolting me back into reality. My gut clenched. The call for help in such a moment of upheaval felt less like a welcome distraction and more like a catalyst for chaos. "I'll get it," I said, standing abruptly and pushing away the couch, attempting to ignore the weight of hearts seeking solace in dark places. As I opened the door, my heart raced not in anticipation, but in dread. I found a figure from our past standing on the threshold, his expression grave and hollow. "Jason," he said, eyes darting towards the living room as if sensing the turmoil that lay beyond the threshold. "Tom," I responded hesitantly, trying to assess what brought him to my door, bristling at the unease washing over me. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about Maggie and I needed to speak to you." There was a tinge of urgency in his tone, as if he was wrestling with the weight of knowledge that could shatter whatever remained of my fragile hope. "She's fine," I insisted, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean, Maggie? She's been distant, and I thought it was just work stress." "But, I saw her yesterday with someone. They were close." His words fell like the sound of glass breaking in a silent room. "What do you mean close?" I demanded, the rumble of chaos twisting my stomach in knots. "This guy," Tom hesitated, almost as if weighing the consequences of his revelation. He was holding her hand. They were laughing. In a way that felt wrong. That it was as if the ground had opened beneath me, each word wrapped in the painful contradiction of what I knew and what I hoped to believe. I staggered back, feeling the walls of my reality closing in, a tight lid on my perception of my wife and the life we had built. "Dad," I heard Megan's voice, tinged with pain and disbelief. "What's going on?" I turned to face the disheartened expressions of my daughters, their silhouettes defined by the dim light spilling into the room, a pathetic glow fighting a losing battle against the darkening clouds of betrayal gathering above us. Suddenly, Emma's laughter felt like a memory, haunting and fragile. That I suddenly realized the worst part. I felt utterly powerless. Every breath I took was laced with anxiety, every heartbeat a reminder of the impending storm. The overwhelming urge to protect my family, to stand against these impending tides of loss, surged within me. "Maggie's in trouble," I finally managed to say, inching closer to the precipice of this tumultuous revelation. "And we need to find her before it's too late." With every word, an unsteady resolve was formulating in my heart. But before I could say another word, a message pinged on my phone, a notification from an unknown number. Heart racing, I swiped the screen open, only to find a cryptic message that would send all of us spiraling deeper into this wreckage of uncertainty. "Maggie is with him. You'll find proof if you really want it." In that moment, the burden of truth loomed larger than ever, and a chilling question twisted in my mind. What if all my desperate attempts to save my family would only lead to its ultimate unraveling? The air in the room grew thick with shock and uncertainty, the weight of betrayal pressing upon me as I glanced at Megan and Emma, grappling with the implications of my wife's actions. I cursed under my breath, my heart racing with each passing second. The message lingered in the air, a dark omen that threatened to consume us all. "Dad?" Megan's voice cracked, demanding clarity amidst the chaos. The innocent gaze she wore moments ago was now tarnished by shadows creeping into her understanding of love and trust. What does that mean? Who's he? I hesitated. The truth felt like a sharp dagger, ready to slice through the fragile fabric of our family. I don't know yet, I stammered, grasping for anything that would shield my daughters from the full brunt of the reality that was crashing down upon us. But we need to figure this out together. We need to drive around and look for her, Alex interjected. His pragmatic approach grounded me momentarily. His willingness to confront this unknown felt like a lifeline amidst a raging sea. I nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. That I turned to my daughters, taking a deep breath to steel myself. Okay, we're going to drive around town. Well, find Mom, and we'll talk about this. It's better if we face this together. Megan's face twisted with worry. What if she doesn't want to talk? What if she doesn't care? Your mother loves us, I asserted, though my voice quivered with uncertainty. She may just be lost right now. But I couldn't help but wonder if I was merely trying to guard myself against the painful truth that still hung in the air, suffocating and unrelenting. That we piled into the car, silence cloaking us like a thick fog. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles widening as I fought against the whirlpool of emotions that threatened to consume me. As we drove through familiar streets, those once imbued with laughter and warmth, everything seemed different, distorted by the presence of suspicion. Stop here, Alex said, pointing to a coffee shop on the corner. Mom used to love coming here in the mornings. Maybe she's here. We parked and stepped out, the bitter chill of the evening air wrapping around us, almost mocking our search for warmth within our family. I led the way, the three of us moving like a solemn procession, hearts heavy with foreboding and anxiety. As we entered the cafe, the scents of ground coffee and pastries infused with memories of better days, I scanned the room desperately. Over there, Megan whispered, pointing towards a corner table where an unfamiliar figure sat across from a woman, the outline of Maggie unmistakable. My heart dropped into the pit of my stomach as I recognized the laughter spilling from her lips, a joy that felt foreign in light of what I was beginning to suspect. Megan, stay here, I urged, though my voice trembled. I needed to protect my daughters from whatever truth awaited us just a few steps away. Moving closer, the laughter transformed into a grotesque echo, taunting my ache for clarity. Maggie. I called out, hoping to shatter the illusion that hung between us, the illusion that everything was fine. She turned, her eyes wide in surprise, quickly masking them with a manufactured smile. Josh, hey. She said, her tone overly bright. It twisted something inside me, making me question every loving moment we had once shared. What are you doing here? Who are you with? I asked, urgency threading through my voice. I indicated the man across from her, the one whose arm rested casually on the back of her chair. Her eyes flickered to him, a visible discomfort wrestling against the facade she tried to uphold. This is Evan. He's just a friend from work, she replied too quickly, her smile faltering under the weight of scrutiny. Just a friend? I echoed, the bitterness seeping through my words. You looked a bit too cozy for just friends. Josh, please, she began, her voice trembling as if she felt the fracture beneath her. I saw at the moment she realized there was no way to shield our daughters from the gnawing reality. Megan and Emma stood behind me, a living embodiment of all that was at stake. A look of confusion and anxiety etched into their young faces as they sought answers in their mother's eyes. Mom? Emma said softly, stepping forward, her tiny body quaking. What's going on? Is everything okay? Maggie's gaze shifted to her daughters, pain flickering within. Sweetheart, but before she could finish, a sudden outburst erupted from the man beside her. Maggie, this isn't the time or place. We can sort this out later. His words hung in the air like a death sentence, severing any hope of retreat for us or of calmness for her. Who is he? I demanded, rage and confusion coalescing into one desperate plea. Maggie, just tell them. Alex shouted, anger flaring in his chest as he stepped forward, unafraid of the man seated between us. Tell us the truth. As Maggie opened her mouth, each second stretched into an eternity, and I could see the struggle etched on her face, an indecision that danced between shame and defiance. Just then, the air turned electric, and the world outside faded. The ringing of my phone broke the moment, an insistent vibration tearing through the silence. I fumbled to answer it, my heart pounding. "Hello, Josh?" came the voice on the other end. "You need to listen closely. I have information about Maggie that could change everything, information you can't ignore." In that instant, the floor tilted beneath me, and I realized that the answers, the horrifying truth I sought, were about to unfold in the most unpredictable way. The rift in my family had just begun, and I stood on the precipice, uncertain if stepping forward would save us or push us into an unforgiving abyss. The tension in the cafe seemed to transform the very air we breathed into a choking miasma, laden with betrayal and unspoken words. I felt the full weight of my daughters beside me, their small hands gripping one another as we all looked to Maggie for answers. As the voice on the other end of the phone continued, I tried to focus, desperate for clarity amid the chaos. "Josh, Maggie's involved in something dangerous. You need to protect your daughters. Find her now before it's too late," the caller said, urgency bleeding through each word. "Who is this?" I demanded, a fraying thread of awareness struggling to hold on. My mind raced through possibilities, incapable of wrapping itself around the notion that my wife could entwine herself in danger. "Just listen. I can't explain everything right now. I don't want to put you all at risk. But she's not who she appears to be. Go to the place where you first met," the voice warned before abruptly hanging up. "What? Who was that?" Maggie snapped, her eyes wide and frantic. I could see the pulse in her throat jump, a telltale sign of a woman caught between the safety of lies and an unraveling truth. That I hesitated, scanning the table, the man of Van leaning back, an aloof expression on his face as if he was watching a show unfold about people he barely knew. My heart began to hammer with determination, drowning out the fears coiling within me. "What is going on, Maggie? Is this guy a part of whatever's threatening our family?" But before she could answer, a commotion broke out at the door of the cafe. A flurry of activity drew our attention as a group of men flooded inside, all dressed in dark suits with grim expressions. My heart sank as I recognized one of them. It was Dante, a figure straddling the lines of legality in our small town, a name whispered with a mix of admiration and fear. "They're here for her," I blurted, panic lacing my tone as I glanced at my wife, who was frozen like a deer in headlights. "Maggie!" I shouted over the rising murmur around us as the group began scanning the room, their eyes sweeping over the customers, alert and calculating. "Megan, Emma, let's go," I urged, but my daughters didn't move. They stood rooted in disbelief, their innocence crashing against the harsh reality swirling before them. "Maggie!" Alex's voice rang out, unyielding and firm. "You have to tell us what's going on." Evan stood, shielding Maggie as if the sudden intrusion meant she belonged to him. "You all need to leave. It's not safe here, get away from her," I shouted, stepping forward, sensing my blood bolstering my resolve. My family was in immediate danger, and it didn't matter who stood in front of me at that moment. I had to protect them. "Maggie, please. Tell us your truth now." Emma's voice trembled, the trust she had in her mother faltering with every passing second. Megan cried, tears brimming at the corners of her eyes. "Don't let them take you." Every moment intensified, and the world around us spun dangerously, the line between love and fear collapsing into one emotion. Maggie's face twisted, guilt and desperation knitting together. "You're right, I need to explain, but we have to get out of here now." "Why? Why now?" I asked, desperation crashing against the fear clawing at my insides, but before Maggie could respond, Dante stepped closer, his voice low, dripping with finality. "Maggie, it's time. You can't run from this any longer." And with those words, the casual air of the cafe dissolved. Chairs scraped against the floor, people gawked and shifted as chaos erupted, the men's intentions now painfully clear. "Maggie, run!" I screamed, urging her to take her daughters and flee, but it was too late. I realized the danger was already upon us. "Maggie, don't!" I lunged forward as Evan reached for her, knowing that I was risking everything. The girls pulled away, straining to stay close to me as panic surged within the cafe, but it was then when all hope appeared lost that a figure from across the room stepped into the fray. An elderly woman, inconspicuous until now, moved with unexpected speed. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice soaring above. the tumult. Leave her alone, the surprise of her intervention halted everyone. As eyes turned toward her, I watched Maggie's expression shift, wonder igniting within the storm of despair. Grandma Annette? Maggie whispered, disbelief coloring her tone. There was deep love etched in that voice, the kind that could reverberate through the darkest shades of life, but before we could process what was happening, one of the men moved toward the old woman, a wicked light sparking in his eyes. You don't want to be involved in this, lady. This isn't your fight, and just like that, the atmosphere shifted once more, the stakes escalating. With a terrible sense of foreboding, I understood what would follow. A chasm was forming around us, one that might swallow our family whole. Just as I was about to step forward to shield them all, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, a stark reminder that the day was far from over. Maggie. I swear I will protect yous. But I need to know everything. I shouted over the clamor, the distance between us growing wider with every stolen second. Josh, it's not just about me. She cried, and I could see the flicker of truth behind her eyes. The kindness of strangers was fading, leaving us to wrestle with the unrelated burdens of love and family, and as I stood on the precipice of chaos, my heart racing and the questions multiplying with intensity, a shadow fell over my family, threatening to tear us apart. What had begun despite my ignorance now flourished in shadowy clarity. I had thought I knew my wife, my family, but everything was about to change. The cafe atmosphere was thick with tension as I stood, unwilling to lose Maggie to whatever darkness clouded our lives. The shout of Grandma Annette had stirred something deep in Maggie, a flicker of hope in the eye of the storm. But that flicker came with added peril. Get behind me! I shouted, instinctively positioning myself in front of my girls. The sea of uncertainty washed over me, and adrenaline surged through my veins, readying me for a confrontation I wasn't prepared for. Maggie's eyes darted between me and her grandmother, tracing lines of confusion and desperation. I thought you were gone. She shouted, her voice trembling. In that moment, the chaos receded slightly, our world narrowed to the three of us: Maggie, Grandma Annette, and me. Time's running out, Dante interrupted, stepping forward menacingly. You really think you can just waltz in here, Annette? You've meddled with things you could never understand. Enough. Grandma Annette cried, her frail body surprisingly firm. You have no business here, Dante. This isn't what you think it is. A flicker of recognition flashed in Dante's eyes, but it vanished as quickly. I felt the air grow still, waiting as if the cafe itself held its breath. I've seen the power of family, but nothing prepared me for the cascading action of Annette facing him down with sheer will. Listen everyone, listen. Her voice echoed with strength. Maggie isn't alone in this. She's got us. She's always had us. Desperation clawed at my throat as I processed her words. Every letter grounded in the weight of their connection made me realize just how much I didn't know. I had believed we were the nucleus of our family, but there were layers of history woven around Maggie that I knew nothing about. Maggie, we need to leave. Now. I insisted again, but my urgency was countered by Grandma Annette's unexpected calm. Sweetheart, she said softly, refocusing on Maggie. You must trust me. They won't harm you, I swear it. I watched as Maggie's resolve began to falter, an internal debate bubbling to the surface. It was then I noticed Evan, still standing in the background, observing the scene with an inscrutable expression. He didn't appear to take part in Dante's motives but seemed equally caught in this web of family and danger. Why didn't you tell me? Maggie's voice was now laced with urgency as she turned to her grandmother. What have you been hiding? I thought I was protecting you, Annette replied, her old eyes shimmering with unshed tears, the weight of regret heavy between them. But it looks like the past has a way of catching up to us. I was wrong to think it could stay buried. My heart pounded loud in my chest, the tension quivered in the air like static electricity. The underlying truth was there, pulsing beneath the chaos. There was something about Maggie's childhood, a family secret that hung in the air, nearly tangible. The cafe, once filled with whispers and hasty drinks, now felt like the scene of a quiet tragedy, where the vulnerability of familiar love danced in tandem with impending betrayal. The room's noise faded into the background as I tried to help my daughters comprehend what was at stake. Megan, Emma, we need to go, don't look, I urged, but their eyes were glued to their mother, tears threatening to spill over. Driven by instinct, I reached for them, but the moment was interrupted. Dante made a sudden, aggressive move toward Maggie. The cafe's murmurs ignited once more into chaos. "You think you can just walk away?" he growled, but Grandma Annette stood in front of him like a barricade, unwavering. "Maggie, don't let him intimidate you," I shouted, sensing time slipping fast like sand through an hourglass. "Whatever it is, well, face it together. Just tell us what he means." As Maggie wrestled with her fear, the phone in my pocket buzzed again, the vibration yanking my thoughts back from the precipice of uncertainty. In the confusion, I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. My heart sank. Messages from my brother flooded in, laced with urgency. "Josh, you need to come home. Now. You won't believe what I found out. It's about Maggie." I could barely breathe, realizing how deeply this tangled string of secrets extended. "What?" I stammered, but the sound of a chair crashing to the ground jolted me back to the chaotic frenzy unfolding. "Dante!" Grandma Annette yelled, but the dark suits were already surging forward, their intentions clear. My heart raced, conflict slicing through me. Every ounce of my being cried for my family. They needed to break free, to escape this darkness. "Maggie!" I cried, desperation clawing at my throat. "Whatever you're hiding, it doesn't matter if we're together. Just trust me." But in that fleeting moment, Maggie turned away from the confrontation, her eyes glistening with an awful truth, the realization that shattered not just her world, but our shared existence. "Josh, I can't protect you from this," she whispered, and time stopped. That simple phrase hung in the air, the weight of what it could mean threatening to tear us apart. My heart sank, the shadows suddenly more extensive than any of us realized. The precariously balanced threads of family love tightened into a noose of uncertainty, the familiar safety now hovering on the brink of devastation. This was no longer just about us, it was about truths that might endanger everything we cherished. In that moment of paralyzing clarity, I understood, trust wasn't merely about believing. It was about standing together, both in light and darkness. The cafe began shifting around us, and I felt the frantic pace of my heart echoing the walls closing in. The final sting of uncertainty jabbed at my gut, and I knew we were teetering on the edge, ready to plunge into whatever lay hidden in the depths of our shared pasts. And then, the shocks of betrayal erupted like fireworks, illuminating our world in blinding clarity. I would soon learn that honesty wasn't just the core of love, it was the crucible of our darkest fears, and what laid ahead could shatter us all. The cafe trembled with an indescribable energy, a tightly wound coil ready to snap. My mind raced, the consequences of Maggie's words sinking deep. She was right, we were all wrapped in a web of shadows I had yet to comprehend. "Maggie, what do you mean?" I pressed, desperate for clarity. She had turned her gaze down, her long hair veiling her face, and it hurt to see her pulling away just when we needed each other most. "I thought I could shield you all," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with something I couldn't quite place. "Shame? Fear? But every secret, every lie, it's like they're engulfing us." Dante stepped forward again, his eyes glistening with some dark amusement as if he were savoring our unraveling. "It's quite the family affair, isn't it? Especially when what you don't know could destroy you. No. I pressed against the tide of his intimidation, feeling a pulse of indignation rise in my chest. "This stops now. You may think you can play with our lives, but you're wrong. We're not your pawns." Suddenly, the cafe door opened with a jarring clang, cutting through the tension like a knife. A man in a worn leather jacket stepped inside, the commotion of the cafe causing heads to turn. His rugged presence was oddly grounding, but there was something fragile about the way he moved, as if he carried an unspoken weight. I wasn't prepared for the frigid clarity that followed. "Josh?" he called, his voice laden with urgency. It took a moment for recognition to spark within me. "Mark, my brother." He looked exactly how I remembered him, careworn, but with an earnest warmth. "What are you doing here?" I fumbled over my words, overwhelmed by the collision of emotions stirring within me. Fearing the tumult around my world, my family. "That I received your messages." "Something's wrong." His eyes flitted toward Maggie before narrowing at Dante, and I saw the appreciation of a brother in distress. "Maggie," he implored gently, "whatever it is, it's a storm we can face together. You're not alone." His simplicity struck me, a moment of grace amid the tempest. Dante flinched visibly, a slip of power in his stance, but the shift was brief. "You shouldn't have come here," he retorted, a hiss laced with barely controlled fury. Ignoring him, Mark took a step closer to me. "You need to know what I found out. It's about the family, about you, me, and this whole mess." "Shut up," Dante barked, but Mark held his ground, a steadfast tower beneath the crashing waves. "Maggie's honesty doesn't negate the love we have as a family," Mark continued, "someone in the shadows of our lives pushing towards the light. But there are pieces missing, Josh. We need to get to the truth before it swallows us whole." The cafe continued to thrum with tension, but somehow Mark's presence, his resolve, drew us together again. Annette stepped back, her frail frame vibrating with a slow sorrow. "We can heal, dear heart," she spoke softly to Maggie, "but we must confront the darkness together. It's now or never." I felt hope sparking as Maggie's eyes flicked to her grandmother. A small bridge beginning to form between their hearts as they faced each other, heartache reflected in their gazes. "I am scared," she confessed. What if the truth is worse than we imagine?" "Everyone faces storms, child," Annette responded, "but it's weathering them together that illuminates the path forward. Sometimes we find strength we didn't know we had." But as Maggie began to nod slowly, uncertainty still danced in her eyes, a deep-rooted fear intertwined with her burgeoning resolve. I sensed the riptide growing, a dark understanding threading itself through my family's fabric, every knot symbolizing a hidden truth. "Josh, you need to understand," Mark interjected, every ounce of emotion now directed toward me. "Mom is carrying a burden you can't even begin to grasp. You need to acknowledge the past so we can change the future." Just behind him, Evan stepped forward cautiously, shaking the heavy air with his soft yet earnest tone. "Your family deserves the chance to confront this together. Whatever it is we're facing, letting it fester isn't the option anymore. We're in this together." Tension coiled around us like a snake ready to strike, and despite the glimmer of unity, I felt that old fear creeping back in. We were still shrouded in darkness, but maybe just maybe it could also show us the light. But in the swell of emotions, those lingering threads of connection morphed into snares, pulling tighter around us. Maggie's eyes darted nervously between her grandmother and my brother, while I could feel my heart beat out an uncertain rhythm between dread and hope. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw the flicker of movement. A stranger had stepped into the cafe's dim light, clutching a crumpled paper tightly in his hand, his gaze fixed intently on us. The air shifted, a sudden chill wrapping around my heart. "I know what you're hiding," he said, voice steady yet laced with every ounce of foreboding. "And you don't realize how deep the roots of the truth run. It is darker than you can fathom." With that, a thick silence enveloped us, questions hanging heavy in the air. I could feel the walls of our safe haven tightening, squeezing out any semblance of peace we had fought to hold on to. Trust teetered on a razor's edge, ready to splinter apart at a moment's notice. "We have to decide now," I urged, feeling the weight of our decisions pressing down. "Either we emerged from this storm together, or it could tear us apart forever." The cafe remained steeped in a weighty silence, the kind that echoes in the corners of the mind long after the source has passed. The stranger's gaze pierced through the gathering fog of uncertainty, and I felt every heartbeat ricochet off the walls like a warning bell. Suddenly, the din of chatter and coffee machines faded, replaced by the strained breaths of my family caught in the grip of this revelation. Maggie's breath hitched, causing a ripple of anxiety to course through the group. "Who are you?" she asked, fragile, like glass about to shatter. "I am nobody," he replied, but the steel in his eyes betrayed his innocence. "I'm just someone who knows what it feels like to live with secrets." He paused, scanning each of us as if weighing our souls. "And I know your secrets, too." "We don't have time for games," Dante growled, but there was apprehension lingering on his lips, betraying a flicker of vulnerability. He shifted closer to Mark, casting an uneasy glance between him and the stranger man, whose presence loomed large as if he could reach into our hearts and unravel us completely. My brother stepped boldly into the maelstrom. "If you know anything that affects my family, you need to tell us. All this playing in shadows is toxic." A slight smirk appeared on the stranger's face as if he relished the power of holding the narrative. "You think you're standing on solid ground, but your family is built on quicksand. One wrong step, and it all sinks." I gripped the edge of the table, fighting the urge to push back, but I found myself rooted to the spot, fear winding tighter around my chest, fighting against the dim hope that marked this day. "Maggie, remember the letter Mom received last year? Mark's voice cracked as he sought to bridge this growing chasm. The one we dismissed as a random mistake. What if it wasn't? The room fell still at Mark's words, my mind racing back to the confusion we had all felt then. A letter that had vanished as quickly as it appeared, a piece of our puzzle we had overlooked entirely. I thought it was nothing, Maggie whispered, her voice catching as horror flooded her eyes. What if it was retribution from the past, something we never understood? Your past lives with you, no matter how much you try to forget, the stranger chimed, as if drawing energy from our collective anxiety. Your family is entwined in dark currents, tightly wound by secrets older than you. The truth is an echo, it's getting louder, and soon, you'll have to listen. As shocks of recognition spread through the group, I sensed the fear rippling outwards, pooling in the corners of the cafe like rising water. We had thought we were safeguarding our family by avoiding the past, only to find it now tiptoeing back into our lives, knocking loudly at the door we had so carelessly left ajar. Stop! I shouted, my voice louder than I intended, cutting through the atmosphere, choking us with its damp weight. What do you want from us? Why are you here? Just to help you see, he replied coolly, that the truth waits only so long before it explodes. Before any of us could interject, the door creaked open again, and a familiar voice tugged at my heartstrings, a voice I hadn't heard in years. Josh? Are you in here? My mother's dull tone seemed weighted by exhaustion, yet there was a spark of hope. She was here, reaching for us like a light in the gloom. The stranger turned to her, an unsettling recognition flashing across his features. Put on display again, are we? Who are you? My mother looked at him, confusion mingled with wariness, her brow furrowing as she approached us with cautious steps. Someone who understands your family's intricacies. Someone who knows the past cannot truly be buried, the stranger said, his tone now devoid of amusement, as if he suddenly carried the weight of an unshared grief. I began to step forward when Mark, sensing my movement, placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. You're here, Mom, he said delicately, but something's off. We need to address this together. She looked at each of us, her expression turning to one of worry. What's going on? I felt something was wrong. Secrets, Mom, Maggie cried out, her voice collapsing under the burden of our revelation. We're drowning in them, and now we've got unfinished business coming back to bite us. And then it struck, our darkest shadows were rising to meet us, sharpened by the knives of betrayal. Vulnerability gripped me, fear clawed at my insides, but deep within my heart, a flicker of determination ignited, one that urged us to unveil the truth amid the rising tide of obscurity. The stranger's gaze lingered on my mother. You think they don't know? You think they're not waiting for the right moment? His voice dropped to an almost conspiratorial whisper. You're all trapped in cycles running far deeper than any of you realize. A terrible silence hung, and in that moment, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. What were we doomed to uncover? What truths had been woven into the fabric of our lives that we had yet to confront? Mom, I began, voice trembling, what truth have you been holding on to that we don't know? As her eyes met mine, the world faded, leaving space only for the unveiling of our family's past, a tapestry of darkness that could shatter everything we held dear. And then I caught a glimmer of movement at the edge of my vision. The crumpled paper the stranger held began to unfold, remnants of a secret illuminating darkness as it slipped from his grip. My heart raced. Was this the catalyst? Was it time to finally face the storms raging within our hearts? Just as the paper touched the floor, something else carried behind it, a solitary picture, taped hurriedly, but unmistakably marking a chapter of our lives I had forgotten. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the faces. Mom, who is this? I asked, pointing, heart hammering against my ribs. She drew a sharp breath, eyes widening, the revelation floating between us, hovering in the dim light like a warning, and before she could answer, chaos enveloped us yet again. I watched as the picture fluttered to the ground like a fragile leaf caught in the wind, revealing the ghosts of the past we had long buried. It was an old photograph, yellowing and frayed at the edges, but the faces were strikingly clear. Maggie and my mother together, arms wrapped around each other, smiling in a moment of shared joy. But behind them loomed an older man whose face sent shoots of recognition shooting through me. Is that? The question hung in the air, heavy with dread. Maggie's expressive eyes darted to my mother, seeking an answer that lay buried beneath years of secrets. Who is he? Why didn't you tell us, Mom? My voice trembled, a testament to the fear coiling deeper within me with every flickering second that I could see the shadows of doubt dance in my mother's gaze, heartache clouding the warmth that once radiated from her. I thought no, I hoped, she stammered, words failing as the cacophony of emotions roared around us. I never wanted you to know about him. You were too young then, Josh. I didn't want to lose you to that past, but the past had resurfaced, shaking the very foundations of our family like an earthquake threatening to rip apart the fabric of our lives. Losing us? Mom, what do you mean? What happened? My fists clenched, urgency igniting my desire to claw through the layers of deception that had shadowed our existence for so long. Unbeknownst to me, it was at this moment that Maggie took a step forward, eyes aflame with determination. You have to tell us, or we'll never be free of your burdens. This doesn't just affect you, Mom. This is about our family. My mother turned to look at Maggie, her steel resolve wavering under the weight of her daughter's plea. It's complicated, she whispered, her voice shaking with the demand for honesty. That man in the photograph, he was my brother. Betrayal pulsed through the words, mingling with disbelief rippling across the faces of my daughters. Your brother? Maggie echoed, confusion warping her features. Wait, he's a part of this? But why didn't we ever know? It was for your protection, she argued, a flash of fire igniting in her gaze as if setting the stage for the truth to finally illuminate the darkened corners of our lives. He got involved with people he shouldn't have. Dangerous people who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. I felt the world shatter around me as truth poured forth, unraveling the twisted knots of confusion. So you didn't just hide this from us to shield us from worry, I said, voice shaking. You did it to protect yourself, didn't you? To protect him? My mother nodded slowly, and with that simple gesture, the air thickened with the bitterness of betrayal and regret. He made choices that put our family at risk. I thought the best way to keep you safe was to bury it all like a fragile piece of glass rather than let it break in the open light. But every choice has consequences, Mark chimed in, stepping closer to my mother. You can't keep the truth hidden forever. It festers like an untreated wound. At that moment, the stranger moved forward, calming yet menacing as a shadow in the periphery, a reminder that chaos had yet to leave. You're all in so deep, trying to shield yourselves from the storm, but what if the storm is exactly what you need? The air crackled as realization wrapped itself around us like a shroud, illuminating the truths we had long abandoned. What do you mean? I pressed, desperate to understand. Every family has storms, tribulations that tear apart or strengthen the bonds that ultimately define you. The truth will either bury you or forge your unity, he replied, his voice a deep resonance that sent shivers cascading down my spine. Then let's face it. I exclaimed, my heart racing with renewed determination. Let's stop running and start confronting everything that could destroy us. Because if we don't, it will haunt us forever. The silence that followed hung thick in the air, an unspoken agreement crafting a fragile connection between us. Even against the swirling chaos around us, there was a flicker of hope, a glimmer of light breaking through the shadows that had long threatened to consume us whole. With swift and steady breaths, I turned back to Maggie, the knot in my throat a reminder of all that hung in the balance. Whatever we face it together, as a family. We've spent far too long harboring a veil of secrets. The love we hold is stronger than any storm, but only if we confront it. As my words echoed, I sensed a shift, the air around us vibrating with a palpable charge of determination. Maggie stepped into me, her fragile form enveloping my strength, and in that embrace, we began to reclaim our family amidst the debris. In that instant, I understood the depth of what we held within our hearts. The vulnerability in the darkness morphed into a battle cry that echoed through time, ready to unify and fortify against the unknown savagery that awaited us. Our unresolved fears transformed into rallying cries for the love that could withstand the very foundation of our existence. We began to step closer together, hearts renewing the bonds that once tied us in love, desperation clawing at the edges of history but never releasing its hold. Just as fragile as the photograph, we were striving for a moment that would both define us and set us free. Then, as if the world had conspired to unveil the final thread, I looked at my daughters, their expressions mirroring hope amidst uncertainty, a shared strength emerging from the depths of unresolved grief. "We've all been hurt," I said gently, turning my gaze to the rest of my family. "But together, that pain doesn't have to consume us. We can confront this darkness, and in doing so, we'll find light in the bonds that cannot be severed." And in that moment of renewed understanding, as I felt the pulse of our unity surround me, I knew that no matter the trials we faced, one thing remained certain: beneath the surface of despair, a family bound together in love could emerge from even the darkest storm unbreakable and whole. And as we stood together, ready to face the truth of all that lay ahead, I felt a warmth arise from deep within my soul, knowing that with every ounce of courage, we were embracing the singular truth: love, in all its complexities, was worth fighting for. It was then that I understood life wasn't about avoiding the storms, it was about weathering them together, turning the chaos into the catalyst of our rebirth. In the depths of uncertainty, we would find our fortitude, and with that realization, we stood in steadfast solidarity, ready to reclaim our family's legacy, whatever that may entail. And as the sun began to set on the horizon, casting shadows across our faces, I took a deep breath, softly whispering, "We will rise together." In that unified heartbeat, we sealed our Fatia family, forged anew, ready to step into the future, one step at a time.